Hey everyone, I'm Selena Hill, and this is the new norm on Black Enterprise, sponsored by Cadillac, where I speak to dynamic leaders, entrepreneurs, and public figures about their latest projects and the impact they're making in today's world. Today, I have the privilege to speak with Laterras R. Whitfield, who is not only the host of the wildly popular Dear Future Wifey podcast, but he is also a 3-time Emmy-nominated producer and a 2-time Telly Award-winning creator, cinematographer, national playwright, and director. Laterras, thank you so much for being here with us on Black Enterprise today.
Listen, Selena, thank you for having me.
So I want to start off about your award-winning, always trending, and often viral podcast, Dear Future Wifey, which is one of my faves. Like, I love the long form, and Dear Future Wifey is one of the only podcasts that I can watch from beginning to end.
Yeah, that means a lot.
What'd you say?
I said that means a lot.
Yes. And for those who don't know, it stands at the intersection of faith, life, and Black love. 3 things that I love. It's currently in its 8th season, and last year it won 2 prestigious Telly Awards. Now, you've also featured a number of cultural figures and notable celebrities on your show, like Sarah Jakes Roberts, Erica and Warren Campbell, DeVal and Kadeen Ellis, Devon Franklin, and Candy Lattimore and Faith Jenkins. So, Laterras, tell us when and why you launched this very successful podcast.
I launched the Dear Future Wifey podcast April the 15th of 2020 at the start of the pandemic. And God told me to make myself my own client. I was shooting content for various clients and school districts. And then God said, make yourself your own client. And so I turned the camera on myself, and where everybody was sheltered in place, I decided to lament about my relationship journey and love journey via a podcast, and that's where Dear Future Wifey podcast was birthed.
And not only is it a podcast, it's literally a living, breathing brand that has launched live events, weddings, so many of the things. Laterras, you're actually known as the relationship whisperer. And Dear Future Wifey is also deemed the healthiest platform for relationships on the internet. At what point did you know this show was going to be such a huge success?
When I did an episode with my boy Jay Barnett, I didn't know him at the time. A friend introduced us, and he was sharing his journey as a Black man and his tumultuous past as it related to love. And I was like, you know what? I've never heard a brother talk like that. So we were on the phone in a pre-interview, and we really just chopped it up. And we had a very, very powerful conversation that led to a brotherhood after that. And so when he came on the podcast and we were just talking and sharing, and it gave women an insight like they've never seen in men before. So when that episode dropped, about a month later, it hit like 100,000 views. And then my channel grew from 950 subscribers to 10,000 in the month of August. Like, it just jumped almost 10,000 subscribers in 1 month. And then the next month hit another 10,000. The next month hit another 10,000. I said, okay, I'm on to something. And so it just been growing from 1 subscriber to 525,000 or whatever I have now. But it's just been, that's what blows my mind when I think about 500,000 people click subscribe and are joining me on this journey.
I am one of them. And shout out to Jay Barnett. He's one of a good friend here at Black Enterprise who we love, feature, and honored. So Dear Future Wifey, like I said, it's become its own brand and entity. You've partnered with other brands like HelloFresh. Can you talk to us about just the partnerships and how you've been able to sustain and monetize this platform?
When people see that you have a healthy brand that's catering to their demographic, then they want in. And so HelloFresh, Factor, what's another company? BetterHelp. They've all joined me on this journey. This is an amazing thing. Really excited that I partner with Urban One, who signed me to their podcast network. And so I never knew what I was doing when I started this podcast. I was just sharing my heart. And I said, journey with me as I discover, uncover, and recover love. And that's about the gist of it. I said, just journey with me. I'm trying to discover who I am after divorce. I want to uncover. I want to shake trees and see what kind of fruit falls out as I get back in these dating streets and seeing what's really out there and seeing how the mindset has shifted and changed since I took vows when I was 28 years old. And then recover love, which is when I find my purpose partner, get down on one knee and ask her to be my wife. And so that's just been my journey. And so inviting people on this journey is not a platform where I created where I want to give people all the answers. I want to sit as a student and learn from my guests the do's and don'ts of relationship, how to cultivate a healthy marriage, how to have steadfast and unmovable love for my spouse. And so I sit in the seat, not as a guru, but in the seat of a student. And that's what truly, truly is the foundation of the Dear Future Wifey podcast.
Before we get to the Urban One podcast, which is a huge deal, what is it that you think has attracted such broad audiences? Why is it that we are just gobbling this content up?
The transparency and vulnerability that sets the stage of each episode. I don't bring people on the podcast to give answers. You know, I have a lot of people that come on that, or they try to pitch their publicists or publishers or whatnot that say, hey, we want my author or relationship coach to come on the podcast. And I say, it's not, if they're willing to lead by their own testimony, because the Bible says people are overcome by the word of our testimony and by the blood of the Lamb, then I want them. But if they're coming to say, here's 5 steps to attracting the love you want, here's 8 steps to doing this, that's not what I'm interested in. And so that's the platform. And so when people say, hold on, Laterras is telling all this business. He talks about his infidelity in his past marriage. He shares the mistakes that he's made in the past. He shares about mistakes that he continually makes currently. Like, this is something we haven't seen before, because people are so used to having these social media personas where I eradicate all of that and just say, here I am, you know, naked and unashamed. And so that's how I live my life. And so I create the platform for my guests to do the same thing. And as they lead with transparency and vulnerability, it gives people space to create their own vulnerability and transparency in their own lives.
You know, speaking of being vulnerable and transparent, you created, the name of it is Dear Future Wife. We know you write letters to your dear future wife. Outside of the commercial success, have you been successful in finding your partner and finding your wife?
Not yet. You see my hand is still don't have a ring on it. Feel like single ladies. But no, I got close. I thought at the end of 2022, but I did a whole episode about that where she was like, I need healing. She said, I've never been loved so properly in my life, and it scares me. And so that's the other part we don't hear about, is when a woman is dealing with childhood trauma, how that resurfaces in her adult life, even in the space of what she said she wanted. She wanted marriage, but when it showed up, she felt like she couldn't be an adequate wife. And but I respect her so much for releasing me, because she ended it. She was like, I need to go get therapy. So I respected that. But that's the closest I've come. And we were looking at getting married September 23rd of 2022. And 2023. And that didn't happen. So I'm back out in these dating streets.
How is it? So, I mean, with Dear Future Wifey being so successful, and obviously you're a creative, how is it that you're balancing the work that you do and also just your personal life? Like, can you balance the two?
I can, but I haven't found a healthy balance that I would like to say I found balance in. You know, I struggle with that. Like, I struggle so much. I spend too many hours in my office working on content, editing videos. I spend too much time in my office opening up my new podcast studio that I'm working on opening up in the next couple of weeks. I travel a lot. I'm doing speaking engagements. And all the while, I've been passionate to open up a boys' home called Kingdom Royale. And so with that being said, I never mentioned my own nephew that I adopted in everything I just said. And there's a 15-year-old that's about to turn 16 on August the 6th that I have to provide stability for and nurturing for as a father. So it's all of that. So sometimes I just look around and I'll be like yesterday, as soon as I got off the plane, I went straight to him and said, here, let's go grab something to eat and let's talk. You know what I'm saying? And so we spent some time together to talk and chop it up as he approaches his, his junior year in high school. And so I'm still trying to find balance. Still trying to find balance. I haven't mastered that yet.
We all are. So Laterras, you also mentioned Urban One. You joined the Urban One Podcast Network, another huge milestone. Talk about how this came about and what it means for Dear Future Wifey.
I had Dre and his wife, Brianna, on my podcast. And towards the end of it, as we were wrapping up, he said, what network are you with? I said, I named the one I was with at the time. He was like, what kind of numbers are you doing? And I pulled up the dashboard and showed him on Apple Podcasts and all the streaming platforms. He was like, hold on, you're doing 250, 300,000 downloads a month. We need to talk. And so we got on the phone the next day, and about a month later, we ended up inking the deal for me to join the family of Urban One. And they're providing so much support from radio. People would call me and be like, I heard your podcast on the radio, drops with different hosts of morning shows talking about my podcast, being on the Urban One network. So it's a dream come true to be partnering with Urban One.
How did you know Urban One was the right partner for you?
I felt like Urban One was the right partner because of what I felt, what they did, what they said. We had real conversations about my expectations. They helped me to have realistic expectations, and they actually provided what I was looking for. And to know that it comes from a history of Kathy Hughes and all the great things that she's done is like, I feel like I'm in good hands. They have a radio support that will support the podcast. So it's all these different ancillary things that they're providing that would cost me tens of thousands of dollars of advertising that, if I paid for it on their magazines and all that type of stuff, that I couldn't afford to spend all that money that they're giving me in advertising. So it just felt right. I prayed about it. I asked God. And truthfully speaking, I never told anybody this, but one of the guests from my podcast, while I was vacillating the idea of signing, one of my guests, this older gentleman, called me up and said, you're wrestling over a deal that you're supposed to sign this coming up week. And he's saying, God said, do it. That's the deal you're supposed to have. That's where you're supposed to be. And I know it's hard for you to let go, but you got to let go. They're going to take you places that you couldn't take yourself. And I was like, let me tell you what I was just going. And I was literally in thought about that at that moment. I was in Houston and I was looking at my phone, reading over the deal points. And I was just like, man, because in that, it's just been me. You know what I'm saying? It's been me running this ship. And I know the level that I want to grow. I've been praying for God to bring strategic partners to join me on this journey. And when God brings them, you can't start second guessing them. You got to say, all right, let it go. And so we rocking. We're going to see how this goes.
So what's next for Dear Future Wifey? And I know you also mentioned a new podcast studio. So what's coming down the pipeline?
I'm about to launch this dating show called Plug Love.
Okay.
And so I tested it out this past weekend in Florida, Fort Lauderdale at Bishop Henry Fernandez Church, where right before I did the Dear Future Wifey podcast live, I allowed for a speed dating opportunity to take place. I asked for a volunteer to come on stage, a male. And then the way it would go is that he would choose a woman out the audience that's willing to participate. And they come on stage and they have a speed date anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes while I, interject and provide insight. If a question is answered and I'm like, hold on, I don't like the way you answer that. It's real fun and spontaneous. But that's the live version. I'm putting everything together to where I can curate these experiences in Dallas in the studio and have people come in, people here locally, and then let them have a dating experience from the world.
When you coming to New York?
Sure, you want to join? You want to be hooked up? You single?
I was just saying we might need you to come to New York. I'm gonna leave it right there.
Yeah, man, that would be fun. That would be fun.
It sounds like a good time. It sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
And then with the podcast studio, tell us about this. What are you looking to do with that?
So I have about 5 different sets there that people can come in and choose their set, and then my team will shoot their podcast. High quality, 3-camera shoot of their podcast, state of the art sound, everything beautiful. And what happens is that they'll get a fully produced episode, and then I'll also have some education tied to it where we can meet and we'll have different classes where I can teach how to start scaling their podcast, how to make sure that they're choosing guests that are engaging, how to create topics for your podcast, how to create engaging dialogue on your podcast. And so they'll get some tools like that. But yeah, when I'm end up launching another podcast from that set, God led me to build a set. And I built this set for, I've always had this idea. I've always loved the elderly. And so I'm launching a podcast called The Elders. And the last episode that I did that released last Wednesday, whenever this airs, but it had this lady named September Black, 73-year-old homeless woman who's a wealth of wisdom, a wealth of knowledge, anointed woman. Well, I built the set a month ago before I even met her a week and a half ago. And God said, I will bring you the host of that podcast. And the set is beautiful. It looks like they're sitting outside of a house on a porch. And the host will be sitting in rocking chairs, having these engaging conversations coming from Titus 2, which is the old shall teach the young. And so I'm happy to have September Black be the host of my newest venture, The Elders.
I saw some of her clips on your Instagram, and I was just like, "Oh, she preaching."
Oh,
She's
tough.
good. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I just love that. That is so exciting. What is your advice to new content creators about creating content that sort of breaks through all the noise? I mean, we are literally oversaturated with content. So, what are you telling folks about how they can actually bubble up to the surface like you did?
Find your voice. Don't try to be like nobody else. I remember when I started out in 2020, what gave me cause to pause was because I was trying to compare myself to the other people that were leading in the relationship space. I kept saying, well, why is somebody going to listen to me when Derek Jackson has all these millions of followers and Stefan Speaks had these millions of followers and Tony Gaskins, he had all these followers. I'm going to just be another black man trying to give relationship advice. And God said, but you're not trying to give relationship advice. And I said, yeah, but they're going to then they're going to be like, why aren't you giving relationship advice? I'm not even trying to offer people advice. I'm just talking to people and hopefully people can extract something from the conversation. And God said, do that. I said, just talk to people? He said, yeah. I said, aren't people going to want like 5 steps of all that stuff that you see these videos that go viral about? He said, that's not you, is it? No. He said, do you? All you want to do is just talk to people and have engaging conversations. Do that. And I said, that'll work? He said, yes, it will work. You'll be providing a fresh take on what we typically see of people giving all these answers. So let's offer and bless you a fresh take. And so I said, cool, I'll do that. And I did that, and God was right, like he always is, and it worked. So I always tell people is just find your voice. Don't try to be like nobody else. You may see somebody else that's the manosphere or the pink pill community or the red pill community. Like, well, I need to be like them. No, if that's not you, you'll spend more time and energy trying to pretend to be something that you're not than truly embracing who you are and attracting your tribe to you. Because we all have a tribe assigned to us, whether that's 10 people, 50 people, or 50,000 people, or 500,000, that you have a tribe assigned to you, but the only way that they're going to be attracted to you is by authenticity. So be your authentic self.
I love that. Laterras, for those of us who are faith-based, what advice would you give about letting God lead us in business? Because a lot of times we feel like, on business or the creative, it's us. Like we'll trust God with other things, but maybe not so much about our careers or things like that.
The Bible tells us to cast all our cares on him because he cares for us. If you care about your business, cast it on him because he cares. And he says that his plans are to prosper you and give you a great future and a great reward. And so God is his success. And I remember September said that his success is tethered to my success. So at the end of the day, he gets his glory from me becoming great. So what kind of testimony is it for me to be serving God and everything I do fails? So my kids, I don't get a lot of success from my kids failing at everything. But when they, for instance, if my child was playing basketball and they shot the winning goal, I'm gonna get excited. I'm like, that's my boy. I'm gonna stand up. That's my boy. So what more will our Heavenly Father do for us? He wants to see you succeed. He wants you to make the baskets. He wants you to achieve the goals that He has placed inside your heart, so that He can say, that's my boy. And the most greatest reward He'll say is, well done, thy good and faithful servant. And so at the end of the day, submitting your will to His will is the only way you can ensure success.
I know that's right. What is the ultimate goal you're looking to achieve through Dear Future Wifey?
I want marriages to happen more. And I want, especially in the Black community, and I want them to last until people take their last breath. One of the biggest compliments I get when I go to some of these countries, I went to Jamaica and the Bahamas and Bermuda, and they say, you have no idea the impact that you're making on our entire country. Mm-hmm. Never looked at it like that. Because if you start thinking about, if I thought about I'm going to impact the country, I'd be like, how? I'm going to start trying to do too much in order to do that. But they're saying that, I remember this one lady came to me, she said, when I date, I as soon as I date a guy, I said, you got to start watching Dear Future Wifey. And I said, that's interesting. And as I began to think about that, that's very smart, because now they can have something to talk about that takes everything away from them. They'd be like, oh yeah, the episode, the old boy, he went through this, he was dealing with this insecurity. What do you think about guys that may be struggling financially and he's trying to find his way? He's like, well, I will support my man if he's doing this. And now he can sit from a seat of not having to say, I'm struggling financially. He can get a chance to ask her questions, and they can have healthy dialogue around the podcast, which brings me to the point of one, I'm going to be officiating my first wedding in December the 7th in Puerto Rico. This couple used my podcast as the foundation of their relationship, and they have such a beautiful relationship. And they say, we will be honored if you could officiate our wedding. Now, there's nothing greater than that. I said, you know what? I'm game. I'm there. Count me in, coach.
Wow. I mean, just talk about that impact that you are making. It is beyond. It is even beyond you. Is there anything else that you want to add? And can you let us know how folks can tune in and support Dear Future Wifey?
People can tune in on YouTube at Dear Future Wifey. They can subscribe to the podcast on there. Please subscribe. Don't be shacking up. I find that still like 50-something% of the people watch the podcast consistently, but just don't subscribe, and it's free. I don't understand that. They can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, leave a review, rate the podcast, and as well as subscribe to that as well. And anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast, that's how you can support the Dear Future Wifey podcast.
Laterras, thank you so much, not only for your time today here in Black Enterprise, but the impact that you're making in so many lives. Again, when it comes to love, faith, and just life, and just being our healthiest selves as a Black community. I thank you for that.
And shout out to Cadillac. If y'all want to give me an Escalade to drive around in and pick up my guests, I'm your boy. Holla at your boy.
There you go.